co-speakers Dr. S.R. Rao, Vice President Research, Sri Balaji Vidyapith Pondicherry, Professor G. Ramesh, IIM Bangalore, Srimati Narmada Chadha, ex-State Commission for Women in Odisha, Professor Subramaniam Raju, Dean International Relations, Pondicherry University, Dr. Priyadarsh Dash, Associate Professor RIS New Delhi, Dr. Sugandhi, Dean CEG Anna University, Dr. Gayatri, who was my scholar and presently working at VIT Vellore. I am also gladdened to invite all officials from Raj Bhavan, Dr. Mohandi, Professor RIS and other distinguished guests, and also I extend my warm welcome to our Registrar, Professor J. Prakash, and also the Seminar Coordinator, Dr. Sasikala, Director, Center for Medical Electronics, and the entire family members of Anna University. I take immense pleasure in welcoming the participants, the future of Bharat, the young force from various institutions, and all the faculty members from more than 100 institutions. I further extend my hearty welcome to the most powerful people of the society, the press and media, who have come here to spread the outcomes of this one-day seminar. A warm welcome to one and all to this G20 Connect one-day seminar on the G20 Leadership Declaration and the Emerging World Order. The G20, representing the world's major economies, stands as a platform for global economic cooperation, fostering dialogue and collaboration on multifaceted challenges. Today, as we explore into the significance of the G20 Leadership Declaration, we are not merely discussing policy documents, but envisioning pathways to shape the future. The evolving world order is witnessing profound transformations. Our contemporary global landscape is marked by interconnectivity, technological leaps, and geopolitical shifts. As we navigate these changes, understanding the dynamics of this new order is crucial. We stand at a crossroads where cooperation, adaptability, and resilience are pivotal in shaping a sustainable future. At this juncture, as Professor of Thermodynamics, I want to explain about entropy, which is nothing but the measure of disorderliness. Today, we need to understand about political entropy. The increasing disorder or unpredictability in global politics is a matter of grave concern. The volatility and uncertainties deemed proactive strategies, innovative policies, and collective actions. Amidst this flux, sustainability becomes imperative. Sustainability in economic growth, environmental conservation, and social equity must be embedded in our policies to ensure a balanced and harmonious future. Our G20 slogan of Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam, one earth, one family, one future, will pave the pathway to achieve these objectives. In short, I want to tell the entropy of the world is increasing at a faster rate because of various conflicts among the countries. Here we need to analyze the fundamental reasons for various societal and economic and environmental disorders. Our objective is to achieve social sustainability, economic sustainability, and environment sustainability to transform this world from disorder to order. Let us harness the collective wisdom gathered here today to chart a course that aligns with the principles of G20, promotes stability, and ensures a future that is resilient, equitable, and sustainable. I once again extend my gratitude to our esteemed Chief Guest, the Governor of Tamil Nadu, and the Director General of Research Information System for gracing this occasion. Thanking you one and all. Valga Bharadam, Valga Vayyakam.
Now it's time to show our gratitude with a small token of love. May I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor to felicitate our His Highness Honorable Governor Thiru Ravi sir with a memento. May I request our respectable registrar, Professor J. Prakash, to felicitate our guest of honor, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, with a memento. Thank you for doing the honors. It's our privilege to have esteemed Professor Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi amongst us as the guest of honor for this G20 Leadership Seminar for Budding Leaders. Professor Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi is a distinguished academic, economist and a thought leader in the field of development economics, including development finance, with focus on building necessary ecosystem like related institutions and infrastructure for eventually achieving SDGs. With a wealth of experience, he has played a significant role in shaping global economic policies and promoting sustainable development practices. Dr. Chaturvedi holds the position of Director General at the Research and Information System for Developing Countries, RIS, an autonomous think tank under the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. With this short introduction, I would like to welcome esteemed Professor Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi to captivate the young minds and metamorphose their thoughts into ideas, eventually making this world a better place to live.
Thank you, Excellency Governor of Tamil Nadu, Shri R.N. Raviji, the Vice Chancellor of the University, Dr. Velaraj, the Professor who is coordinating, Professor Sasikala, my dear students, faculty members and colleagues, it's a great pleasure and honor for RIS to associate with this very important initiative of our university to bring together our ideas, thoughts and accomplishments that India has with G20. And as you might have gathered, the idea of G20, as we saw at the head of the state summit, as we saw throughout almost 10 to 11 months that we prepared, and India being part of the Troika, we could bring in a large number of engagements that are there, which were part of our declaration, but they were also part of the dimensions of engagement that were there. I think 3 or 4 issues I would very much like to highlight, and I think it is important for us to grasp it, not only in terms of what has actually happened, but what is it that we need to do in future. And from that perspective, I would very much like to congratulate His Excellency the Governor for giving this idea to the university and to the Vice Chancellor for taking it forward and we engaging with as to what India thought of and what we have achieved. If you recall, there were 6 broad priorities that were identified as part of the G20 presidency of India. The first and foremost was about the green development. So how we achieve climatically compatible development strategy and the whole idea that Prime Minister spelled out in terms of the lifestyle for environment or sustainable development. The second was to make the process inclusive. So inclusive growth was the second most important objective of our whole strategy in the G20. The third was to bring in focus on Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, Agenda 2030. So that was extremely important. The fourth was women-led development. And women-led development related several initiatives have come in. I would talk about that a little later. Then came in the technological transformation. So how technology is transforming our lives, how technology has the capability to bring in change, both in terms of enhancing the quality of life, but also posing challenges like artificial intelligence and how that is connected with ethics, how information communication technology is not delivering or bringing in exclusions rather than inclusion. How do we reduce cost of transactions when it comes to the finance? So all those dimensions, but technology at the center of our development strategy. And the last was about bringing in multilateral institutions for the 21st century. So as you keep on hearing, United Nations and its working style is outdated. It doesn't fit in the bill. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, doesn't deliver what is required. The World Bank is not sufficient. So these are all multilateral institutions and they are there. Before I get into more substantive issues, let me here mention that the G20 presidency of India stands for more of People's Connect. So it is called People's Presidency and is very widely connected. And this was largely in terms of doing it not in Delhi and making it a diplomatic exercise, but doing it all across the country. And if you see, when the presidency was with China, China could do the G20 events only in 12 cities of China. When it came to Indonesia, you find that Indonesia could do it in 18 different islands, different meetings were done. But for India, the number was something like more than 60. 60 cities hosted all across the country, different G20 meetings. And this gave in a huge push in terms of how we could bring in people's engagement all across. In fact, RIS was given responsibility to reach out to different universities. And Prime Minister's idea was that we reach out to 75 universities because we were celebrating 75th year of India's independence. But fortunately, the momentum that was created, and my colleague Dr. Dash and team, they all made efforts, and we could reach out to 101 universities. And this was a big, big achievement. Anna University was very much part of it. And then later on, Prime Minister met all 101 vice chancellors in Delhi, and we had more than 7,000 students, and it was live telecast on Doordarshan and all the channels. So it was large connect of youth, large connect of young minds as to how we go forward. And this is when reaching out to people, when reaching out to masses, bringing them in, creating local business, local tourism, local markets, like for in Srinagar, which has been a major tourist destination, had no road around Dal Lake where people could move around. For the G20 meeting, the Dal Lake was cleaned up, a pathway was created, and see the kind of tourism that it is attracting. Several OD/OP products were gifted to G20 delegates by all the different state governments. And this, I think, is something which is extremely important in terms of bringing ordinary pedestrians connect with G20, intellectuals connect, students connect, women's connect, financial institutions connect. So you find that at varied level, G20 could bring in the dimensions that were there. So People's Presidency in all its respects was very widely celebrated all across the country. But let me now also turn to the substantive contribution. India was not just reacting to the legacy issues which are there in G20. We could successfully place our own development priorities, which India has leveraged in last few years, that we could assertively place before the global audience. We could place it before the international institution. And first and foremost there was the very idea of making our development process an inclusive process. Bring in people who are there. And this is something that India has taken up not only on G20 platform, but on all global platforms where we are playing an important role. So in G20, we could bring in African Union, and for the first time, Africa now would be member of the G20. This is something which is going to go down in a major way. The G20, as you know, covers 85% of GDP and 62% of population. But with the addition of African Union, we got advantage of only 3% of GDP. So the GDP coverage of G20 became 88%. But if you see the population coverage, it has gone up from 62% to 79.8%. So you can imagine a global grouping of G20 covering almost 80% of the global population. So this was our contribution in the G20 presidency. But if you see BRICS, we work very closely with South Africa, and in BRICS we have got 6 new members added. And if you see the BRICS composition, BRICS now covers 30% of the global GDP, and it covers 40% of the global population. So you can imagine our endeavor to make global governance more a participative process. And the decline of the G7 or the West, which is discernible, we are trying to see how we make the process more inclusive and more participative in terms of we going forward. This is also in terms of reflective of our own maneuvering space that we are trying to carve out for our own domestic policy making. Because if you see the history of G20, G20 came out of the crisis that we had in Southeast Asia. So Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, they were grappling with the property price crisis that happened in '97, and after that it was thought that finance ministers and central bank governors must meet and discuss this issue. But by the time things started moving, the Lehman Brothers collapsed, and then it was thought that the recession would be widespread. So in 2008 and in the beginning of 9, it was decided that instead of just the central bank governors and finance minister, we should meet at the level of the prime ministers and presidents. So we had the first summit at the level of the head of states in 2009. And within 1 year, the presidency went to South Korea. And South Korea in 2010 added one more vertical to it, because their explanation was that finance and our ability to address financial crisis directly head on would not help. The trouble in financial sector is because we are not giving adequate attention to development. Development is the pivot. Technology is the pivot. We would have to address that. We would have to bring that in. And once we do that, then only financial crisis can be solved on a sustainable basis. So in 2010, for the first time in South Korean presidency, we created one more track, and that was called as Sherpa track, where Prime Minister or President's representative, and this time Amitabh Kant, led the process from the side of the government of India. So this Sherpa track in last 10 years, from 10 to 20, contributed immensely in bringing technology, maritime security, maritime management, issues related to oceans and space. They all were brought in, including the granularity of agriculture, tourism, and many other dimensions, as you might have seen. It took up such a big momentum that now we have not only 12 working groups, which are government to government, but we also have 12 engagement groups. I was part of the one that has led through all the think tanks, so T20. And we have several people who contributed to T20, to W20, Women's 20, Labour 20, like that. So engagement groups and working groups contributed to the substantive agenda. And this is also reflective of India's engagement in not only these groups, but we contributed one working group which came up on startup, the process that we are contributing within the country. And it has become now part of the Startup 20 that is there. India also facilitated discussions on space economy. So we first time hosted a detailed meeting of the space scientists and the global governance of space. We also got in several security issues, which are also important in terms of how we bring in governance component, which is also intertwined with our security dimensions, both in ocean and also in space. So these meetings came up as part of the larger issues, the cyber security, the genetic engineering and genetic engineering related ethics component, AI and AI-related ethics component, they all came in and contributed to this very substantive agenda that emerged during our substantive discussion. In fact, just yesterday, we were finalizing a volume which brings together outcome documents of all the meetings that India hosted. And as I mentioned, more than 200 meetings. And the documents, if you place them together, which we did just yesterday, we finished the exercise, and it goes to 4,678 pages. So all the documents, if you put them together, now Government of India is going to place them. Prime Minister is hosting the closing meeting of G20 on 22nd of this month. We are going to take that whole idea forward, and this compendium would be released. So mega effort has gone in by millions of minds from all across the world, including from India. And this, I tell you, is also important in terms of our own ability to contribute. And this is because we are thinking in terms of what is in the best interest of the country. And if that ability comes in, we can set the global agenda rather than reacting to it. And this is discernible not only within the government of India, but you find even in other institutions. If you see the way our finance, the global economy and Indian economy are being managed, you find a huge balancing act that Reserve Bank of India has extended. And the latest numbers which are released just yesterday are very reassuring in terms of how we are able to manage inflation and economic growth and rate of interest. All the three in a remarkably magnificent manner, I would say. When the world was grappling with this huge supply chain disruption across, IMF was continuously advising us to raise rate of interest. But for the first time, RBI did not pay any attention on n number of suggestions from IMF and other entities. We kept on a very sharp focus in terms of how we go forward. And if you see, last year RBI predicted India's economic growth to 6.5%. Many global entities suggested, including the World Bank, which placed it at 5.7%. The Asian Development Bank placed it at 5.9%. We remained firm on 6.5%, and now you see in quarter two the performance is 6.5%, in quarter three 6%. So this average is going to end up and give new impetus to economic growth. So the point that I was trying to make is in terms of how we are going to go forward, making our economic growth very inclusive. And if you see the financial year 23 data also shows that the credit creation in the economy has expanded by 15%, and it now stands at 1,36,000 crores. This is the total credit expansion. Sector-wise breakup I am not getting into, but important part is that the endogeneity that is required in our decision-making, our ability to think and assert and contribute to global discussions with our own take and not getting influenced by others, I think is an important point to celebrate as we observe what India has achieved in the G20 presidency. Two more points and then I would stop. The first is for those who are from the economics and history background here in this room, but also I think of the general interest in terms of how India's substantive contribution by our various departments and agencies has led to some very important milestones for the G20 presidency. And this, I think, is important because students should take up these subjects for detailed analysis, and I'm sure Mr. Vice Chancellor would take it forward in terms of how we are going to go forward. And as I, in the beginning, mentioned, the one contribution that I consider very important is the idea of LIFE, L-I-F-E. And this LIFE stands for the lifestyle for sustainable development. There are 5 facets to this which make the concept a very substantive concept. The first component of lifestyle for environment, and you would imagine that this is about individuals. This is about we adjusting our life. But it doesn't stop there. It goes even further. The first component of it is sustainable consumption and production, SCP as it is called. How do you define sustainable consumption? How do you define sustainable production? How our companies, our commercial entities can adopt technologies that can produce recycled products, so circular economy. So maybe among the students, Mr. Vice Chancellor, we can think of having some debates, discussion on what is circular economy, how we achieve circular economy, what are the parameters, and how we can bring in terms of the concepts. The second component of that comes in terms of who are the actors. So you find many more social enterprises that are contributing. India has contributed the dimensions which are related to the new social sector stock exchange that has now been operated by SEBI, and we are bringing in companies which are going beyond profit. So they are contributing to the new economy that we are generating. The third component comes in form of how this production is actually facilitating access to credit by the global market. So how we reduce the higher cost of accessing capital. And that leads me to the fourth point within this is in terms of ethics. How ethics is important. Ethics connect with technology, ethics connect with development, and ethics connect with finance. All are extremely important, and we need to focus on that. The last component that comes in here is in terms of measurement. So how we go beyond the gross domestic product, GDP, to bring in well-being. We bring in biodiversity, we bring in other elements of well-being which they. And the last point that I want to mention is in terms of focus of Indian presidency's contribution on blue economy. Blue economy has contributed, Chennai is very much a hub for maritime connectivity of India, has played an important role. Tamil Nadu plays an important role in India's industry which is associated with maritime security, maritime management. But I think time has come for us to see how we promote shipbuilding activities and in what way we take the G20 presidency forward. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with India's presidency in G20 summit. People with strong personalities are assertive, focused, determined, and proactive. Tapping into this empowering combination of qualities, they become the leaders. His Highness Honorable Governor has always urged youth to take risks and not get intimidated by failures, as failures are a part of learning exercise. Our Honorable Governor has taken an immense initiative in bringing G20 seminars in universities for students to get empowered. The first seminar of this type was conducted in Alagappa University, and now here we are making our Honorable Governor's vision come true in Anna University. May I take the immense privilege to welcome our Honorable Governor of Tamil Nadu and Chancellor of Anna University, who emanates inspiration by just his presence, a man who needs no introduction to us, to deliver the presidency address.
Respected Vice Chancellor, Anna University, and the host of the event, Professor Raz, Director General, RIS New Delhi, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, distinguished personalities on the dais, the resource person sitting here, my dear students, faculty members, members of the media, gracious ladies and gentlemen, அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். At the outset, I'd like to thank Professor Velraj for this initiative, igniting the young minds, deliberating over the issues agitating the world, and India's role in shaping the new world. Events happens, but what is important is the events like G20. After that, the momentum that it generates, the energy that it unleashes, how to galvanize it, how to harness it. And with that intent, even though our presidency of G20 is coming to a close, the fact that India will continue playing a significant role in shaping the world, the future world, it is indisputable, and in this, the role of our youth, our students, is crucial. And that is the purpose of this meeting, this seminar, and subsequent seminars that we intend to host in other universities. I am thankful to Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, a distinguished economist and a thought leader, who has been contributing to our policy plannings in a very, very significant way. He himself and his organization played a significant role in G20. And he coming over here, participating in it, and beautifully, in nutshell, he could have taken much longer time, but in a short and detail, he gave the specific themes which originated, which were dwelt upon, and what India contributed and what India will continue to contribute. I am sure in the day-long seminar, in various verticals, various sessions, you all will be discussing those issues. And at the end of the day, I'm sure each one of us would be enriched in our future vision, how to go about it. I would like to just give you the context. I'm not going into the specifics, different themes, different verticals, but the broader context in which our country finds today, the context, the present state of the world. The present state of the world is something that we are in one way or other aware of by facets. We know that there are major global challenges confronting the world, making this a highly vulnerable planet, major existential threats. And some of these problems, the prominent among them could be: 1, poverty; Look at the world. We have a large number of countries, a large number of people who are in absolute poverty, who are denied of the basic ingredients of a decent, civilized human life. This is grossly inequitable. On the one hand, we find, driven by consumption, there are countries super rich. On the other hand, we find countries which are in a state of dire poverty. And this grossly inequitable world is not a sustainable world, because we know that, first of all, it's not only the fact that it is contrary to the basic tenets of human dignity that no human being should be deprived of the basics of a civilized life, but also the poverty generates its own problems, and the world is facing today. We have problems of conflict. The conflict at various levels, conflicts manifesting in the shape of major wars. The war in Europe has not yet ended, and another major war has begun in Middle East. All these wars, they have a severe impact on the global supply chain. It impacts the poor much worse than others. So it makes the life of poor far more difficult, these wars. But there are numerous invisible wars all along. Terrorism, virtually in every continent. And unfortunately, there are countries in our own neighborhoods, those who believe that terrorism could be used as an instrument of their foreign policy to serve their national interest. But terrorism takes a heavy toll again on life and living conditions. The conflict between humans and the environment, the climate crisis, we all know. We are all talking about it. The world is talking about climate crisis. It wasn't talking until a few decades ago. But today they are talking about it, but talking mostly in terms of blaming who is responsible for it. Not finding the answer to it. We know that Mother Earth is heating up. And this, if not arrested, if it is not stemmed, there are many island countries in the world which are likely to be wiped off the map of the earth in a couple of decades. But even other countries now are facing more frequently natural disasters. So, the climate crisis, which is existential in nature, while it is looming menaciously on the horizon, it is inflicting through disasters off and on in different parts of the world. And we find that the world is not equipped or is not resilient enough to deal with this crisis which are emerging, the climate crisis, that is disasters, natural disasters. There is absence of resilience. So, the present world order It has not addressed the problem of poverty. In fact, the problem of poverty has escalated. It has not addressed the problem of conflict, bringing peace. We find not only the conflict has escalated, but potentially we are living in a most dangerous time when there are several countries who have sufficient number of weapons of mass destruction, each one enough to destroy the world many times over. So this is a very, very unstable equilibrium, very unsafe world. The world order post-Second World War, which was created with an intention to bring peace in the world, has miserably failed on this front. On the climate, 7 decades ago, nobody talked about the climate change. It wasn't a topic of discussion. In fact, there were people with prescience, people with foresight. They were watching with concern the trajectory of development which was happening in the decades of 40s, 50s, 60s. And some of them had expressed their concern. And one of them was Lynn White Jr., who in 1965, when he wrote the essay, Historical Roots of Our Ecological Crisis, that we are heading towards ecological crisis, what could be the root of it? It wasn't taken seriously, and I suppose not many people read it. 5-6 years later, again some thought leaders of the world got together, formed the Club of Rome. They started talking about resource depletion, exponential rate of resource depletion due to escalated developments, reckless development. Will the earth sustain those resources? Are they exhaustible? Are they inexhaustible? Or will they last, or will they not? And should they not last, what is going to be the fate of it? But these were all along the availability of resources, natural resources. Not that the climate crisis that would create. But look, a few decades later, we are all in one way or other suffering it. Very mercurial weather. The places which were known for cold climate, they are experiencing unprecedented heat waves. Deserts are getting flooded. All these are disrupting the established life, because every climate creates its own lifestyle. People get used to that habitat, and the whole ecosystem develops around that. These are being disrupted. And this major climate crisis, which happened following this world order, it has failed to address. Instead, it has actually created, it can be credited for creating this kind of a situation where with the reckless exploitation of resources, consumption-driven growth, reckless consumption, Darwinian model of growth. If you are strong, you are smart, you survive. Those who are not, let them perish. No tears need be shed about them. This has created this situation. And then we are just out of unprecedented, perhaps people say once in a century, but some people say perhaps in memory, human memory, the biggest pandemic that the world faced. When the pandemic broke out and it didn't spare anyone. The whole world was in grip of it. We were all locked inside our houses. Huge disruption of life, massive loss of life, and uncertain future. At that point of time, massive human crisis. The poor countries, they looked at the developed countries with expectation that when they were developing the vaccines and they had the medicines, whatever medicines they could, perhaps this global pandemic could kindle a sense of compassion, human compassion. And they would come to the rescue of the more deprived people, less fortunate people. But what happened? When they developed the vaccines, they began looking at it as an opportunity to make more money. The vaccines prices went up. It was at this point of time, our country, Bharat, thanks to our scientists, when we made the vaccine, we shared it with over 150 countries in the world, with more than 100 countries free of cost. But the world order, I'm talking about the existing world order, this rich and prosperous, they did not. So even pandemic, it failed. If a global crisis in form of a pandemic emerges, the present order is incapable of addressing the problem at all. This post-Second World War order, which continued shaping the destiny of the world for over 6 decades until the second decade of the 21st century, when China started rising. It started making its presence felt on the global scene. When China began showing its economic heft, because it began growing at a very fast rate, it became the manufacturing hub of the world. And when it started, in some way, posing a challenge to the world order, much of the developing world, the poor world, thought that perhaps there would be a correction, needed correction, because China itself, a poor country, came from poverty, developing, and reached a stage where it offers a model which could be more equitable and just. When China began rising and influencing the world order, what it did, China Sea, which is a global common, to which all the littoral states of Southeast Asia, they have a rightful claim under the law of the seas, exclusive economic zones. But China, it develops all the rocks and reefs in the China Sea, reclaimed it, developed into military platforms and placed their military hardwares, fighter bombs, bombers, jets, and virtually militarized the South China Sea to the detriment of the littoral states. They kept crying, they kept opposing, they didn't listen. Not only that, they started reaching out to the world, the poor developing countries, and giving them loans, making them believe that they would create infrastructure in those countries which would boost their economies, persuaded, convinced, cajoled, and even corrupted those regimes and gave them loans, built infrastructure, which were white elephants. They were not of any use. Example is our neighbor, Sri Lanka. They did several infrastructure projects, which eventually turned out to be a burden on the state, on the country. Hambantota Port is an example. They told them a story that, look, it lies very close to the east-west lane of sea communication. And so once we have a port, the money will shower, because all the ships transiting would come here, berth here for servicing, and it will boost the business. Over $1 billion investment, which was a loan on Sri Lanka. And by the time the port was built, it didn't get one single ship. And when Sri Lanka was not able to repay the loan, and China insisted that, of course, the loan had to be repaid as per the terms, Sri Lanka had to surrender the port. And on a long-term lease, which became practically a Chinese asset. And when China took the port, they said that, look, now the port is not sustainable. They need more land to create some economic activities to sustain this port. So not only port, they took far wider area of territory of Sri Lanka on a long-term lease, which brought and taking these areas under China's control to put their assets to do their activities. There are several other examples, even the power plants. The power plants they built at such a cost, and then Sri Lanka was not able to repay. Some of the power plants costing about $1,300 plus million US dollar. And when they were not able to repay the loan, and they said, okay, you now run it, you take it over. And when the same country which built this at a $1,300 million plus dollar, when they purchased it, they valued it at $950 million. What happened to the $400 million? Example in Pakistan. We don't talk about it, but they built Gwadar port. It was not needed. So it started, one after the other countries started getting into debt trap. So the rise of China created huge apprehensions in the world. In the developing world, no, this is not going to help us. In this backdrop, when India rises, and of course we know India is rising, today India is not what it is. It was a decade or two back, not at the margin of the world affairs. Today it is at the center stage. If we have moved from the 10th largest economy about a decade back to the 5th largest and poised soon to become the 3rd largest, and if we are the fastest growing large economy in the world, when the world is grappling with a threat like recession, advanced countries, this country is looked upon with a lot of hope and expectation to save the world. And in this, what India is doing, what our country is doing, if you look at the issue of poverty, because what India does, it does at a scale, and of course the speed, which is so credible for the world itself, because the fact that we have 1.4 billion people, it's not an experiment on a small island like Singapore and all. If a project, if something can succeed on a country of this scale, it is a credible option for the world. So what India did about the poverty, or has been doing about the poverty, we all know that some about 14 crore people have been pulled out of multidimensional poverty in the last about a decade is not a small number. 140 million people, 14 crore people being pulled out of multidimensional poverty is a great achievement. And how did this happen? The fundamental model of development, the Prime Minister changed it. How? You know, Prime Minister, the Western model of development, conceptually, theoretically, it was driven by the model of, which was theoretically laid down by the people like Jeremy Bentham and others, greatest good for the greatest number. Bahujan hitay, Bahujan sukhay. Majority, you satisfy the majority, greatest good for the greatest number. And by very meaning of it, inherent in it is, if there are some people left out, doesn't matter. It's a part, inevitable part of progress. Prime Minister changed the whole model. No. It has to be all-inclusive. Sabka saath, sabka vikas. Don't leave out anyone. Everyone has to be included. Inclusive growth. And how it was achieved, so that the world could look at and again benefit from the experience of India. If 14 million people have been pulled out of poverty, multidimensional poverty, how? And here India offers a model. All-inclusive growth, how? Leveraging the technology. Leveraging the technology to provide the basic ingredients of a healthy citizenship to all the citizens, irrespective of location, irrespective of political dispensation to which they are currently there. So, widespread of digital infrastructure. Today our country is the most digitalized country in the world. Remotest village, everyone has mobile. Optical fiber cables have been laid to villages. So, empowered with digital technology, democratization of digital technology, taking it to the last man. In fact, when digital technology came, it was elitist. Technology by nature is elitist. And in the Darwinian model of development, it only further accentuates the gap. Because the rich and smart people will have access to the technology, poor will not have, and the gap will further widen. Here is a model that this technology was taken to the last man. At the time, many people thought, what will the poor man do except watching some fun? No. Open the account, Jan Dhan account. More than 50 crores bank accounts were opened. Many of them were zero balance account. At the time, people thought, what is this? They mocked at it. But this Jan Dhan account, Aadhaar and mobile, the trinity of it, did the wonder. The benefits intended for the beneficiary started reaching the beneficiary without any obstruction. Citizens were empowered. And then this digitally empowered citizen, and we know today that people, even the small roadside vendor, uses the mobile app for payment. And today we account for the largest digital transaction in the world. This model, leveraging technology, taking it to the last man, and creating an infrastructure, an ecosystem like jam. It has enormous potential. Now there's any direct benefit, it goes to the account. Earlier, even Mahatma Gandhi rule employment guarantee. When the labor used to go and work, and when he used to go for the payment, cash payment, we know almost all over the country, the person, the hard labor, he or she had to pay. The corruption. Today it is direct transfer, no cash. Look at the wonder that it has done. Today, Prime Minister is releasing another the tranche of PM Kisan, 18,000 crore. 18,000 crore will be going to the accounts of millions and millions of farmers at the flip of the finger, at the button. They will get the money. There is no question of farmer going to the office, block office or tahsildar or here and there looking around the bank and no, it will go straight. How this digital technology is assisting in Ayushman Bharat, giving the healthcare access. Healthcare again, health for all. Earlier we also addressed the health issue from 5-year plan to 5-year plan based on limited resources. Okay, this year we will build so many hospitals, so many medical colleges. Again, greater good for the greater number. Try to provide as much as you can. Not all inclusive, not sabka saath, sabka vikas. Take everyone. Ayushman Bharat does not exclude anyone. All over the country, Tripura to Tamil Nadu, everyone. Eligible people are beneficiary of it, and if they are the